Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Crown and today we are going to have some more stories that I hope that you will enjoy. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to the channel, like the video if you enjoyed it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now, without further ado, let's go! First story. Refuse to give a painkiller to someone crying in pain? Congrats on failing your final. 2 years ago, I used to share an apartment with my sister and 2 other roommates. In the flat next to us lived 3 girls whom we've known for years, as we all used to live in the same dorm years ago, plus their 2 new roommates whom we did not know well. The other girls were messy and kinda immature because they were younger than us, but we all mostly got along since we go way back. This one time, my sister and one of our roommates got into a huge argument with the girls from the other flat because of them taking utensils and clothes from our place without permission and losing them. I did not participate in the argument, but there was obvious tension between the 2 flat residents. Anyway, a few days after that, after a long day of being cooped up in a library preparing for a difficult final, I got home late at night and there was only one of my roommates home that night. Pretty much as soon as I got home, my face started swelling up and my toes started aching like crazy. I was in so much pain. I started crying and there was no painkillers and I had no way to get out to the pharmacy that late at night. My roommate, who also had nothing to do with the argument earlier, knocked on the door of our next door neighbors, and one of their newer roommates, whom we barely knew, answered the door. My roommate then explained the situation to her, and that I'm in excruciating pain, and asked if she could borrow some painkiller. The girl looks my roommate up and down and tells her, "Oh, I have painkillers, but I'm not gonna give them to her, because I'm the sister of the girl who got into a silly argument with her roommate." Obviously, I'm stunned someone can be this petty, but I let it go and I survived the night. A few days after, I happened to be home late at night and I hear the doorbell ring. I open the door and lo and behold, it is the same girl who refused to spare me an ibuprofen a few days ago. Except to being snarky, she looked super distraught and defeated. She looked both surprised and relieved I was the one who answered the door that night. Then she opens her mouth. I'm sorry, I don't know how to say this, but my charger died on me and I have a final tomorrow morning and a submission now, and I just started preparing. I know you have one like mine and I was wondering if I can borrow yours." Obviously, she was down on her luck that day because I wasn't my usual generous self. I looked her up and down and said, "No, sorry, I'm using it right now," and shut the door in her face. This might be the bittiest thing I've ever done in my life, but I don't exactly hate myself for it. Next story. My Karen neighbor done fed up. Update 2. So yeah, I have several updates. First, my cross-country motorcycle trip with the crew got cut short because of an incident that I will go into detail about shortly. But first, the Karen update. So they had a paramilitary hearing last week and she was denied bail. The Crown had her psychologically assessed while she was sitting in prison. They had a plea hearing yesterday and the Crown gave her an opinion. They said they would drop all the charges if she agreed to a minimum of 6 months stay in a psychiatric facility. Karen accepted the minimum of 6 months. And in all honesty, I believe that's a good outcome. She needs help. Even CJ, the guy whose arm she slashed, thought that's for the best. Now for the other updates why I cut the trip short. So my girlfriend Joy has almost completely moved into my house, our new home, and she was aware of this trip that had been planned for some time. And she was cool with it. Joy was concerned for Karen's kid. He's 19, so she had been dropping off plates of food, keeping her distance because Yui is a small woman and she wants to keep herself safe. Monday morning at about 2:30 a.m. she hears bang 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 at the front door. She goes to see what's going on without opening the door. We have a camera intercom. The kid's out there half in tears asking to come in. Yui asked what's going on and all he would say is he needs to come in. He needs to come in. And she said no. If something wrong, she can call the police for him. And that's when he starts screaming. He needs to come in now because he loves her. What? She was understandably scared, so she called me. She called the police. I rode non-stop for 29 hours to get home. See, she called the police. They came, forced their way into the house and wanted access to my security system. They wanted the hard drives. My best guess is that my footage makes them look bad and they want to get rid of it. They were in my house for a few hours, demanding access to my safe where all the CCTV hard drives are. Yui doesn't have the combination for it. They left without even speaking to the kid. Now today we are on our way to meet with the Citizens Investigation Unit to hand off the footage from Monday. So yeah, I have to find a lawyer to deal with them. But Yui is happy I'm home, and I'm glad we have some us time. She's taking the next week off and she has some PTO saved up. Gonna take a semi-vacation up north. Just thought I would give you all a little update on everything because there has been a bit of inquiry on the topic. Next story. Karen plays a stupid game, wins a broken arm. My buddy B breathes martial arts. Some people love cars, some people love biking. He collects martial arts forms like people used to collect Beanie Babies. The word obsessed would be aptly applied. At the world of Wally, our wandering protagonists were picking up some beer and pork rinds. B was wearing a blue muscle shirt with a full sleeve underlayer and black baggy surfer shorts. While scanning the selection of beers to rent, the desired brand was spotted but was trapped behind a pallet jack that had a few cases of something or other on it, left behind by one of the employees for some reason or another. Wanting to liberate the libations, B started to push it a few feet down the aisle so he could free the poor trapped beverages from the shelf. Stomp, 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 stomp. Down the aisle came she. She was wearing a loose flowing pantsuit type thing. I don't know what they are called, but it's a one-piece outfit with the fabric kind of loose and pillowy around the legs, so even though they are individual legs, they kinda look like a dress when they move around. I remember the white belt with a large silver buckle, the shoes that are high heels but not with the skinny stiletto heel thing, but the heel column is a lot thicker and made a loud clumping sound as they purposely hit the floor. And the pearls? I've never seen anybody wearing pearls at a Wally World who was pleasant to deal with. But there they are, the Wicked Witch equivalent of a snake's rattle, a coral snake's stripes, or a porcupine's quills. She had seen B pushing the jack filled with boxed, made the requisite connections to open her mouth before engaging her brain, and so the fun began. "You, worker, I need a few more things for my garden party." B could be surly when he felt like it. And right now, he felt like it. Her harassment was delaying his drinking time and he was not in the mood. "I don't know what your problem is, lady, but I'm not your servant." And she did not like that. Face quickly turned red with anger. She strode into his personal space and poked him squarely in the chest 3 times in rapid succession. "You will not address me as lady. I will not be treated badly by the likes of you. Now come with me. I will talk with your manager later. If you perform to my satisfaction, I might even let you keep your job." B mutters, "Whatever," as he turns away from her and takes a step or two down the aisle. "How dare you!" came the outburst. She reached forward and grabbed his shoulder forcefully, and I could see her claws' nails digging through the thin underlayer and probably cutting into his skin below. With the grace of a defensive guard who moonlights as a ballerina, I saw him twist his shoulders and do a kind of side thrust motion with his hips, and over his shoulder she went. It was a thing of beauty. Clearly an instinctive reaction from being grabbed with pain-induced. She landed hard, with her arm smacking the boxes still stacked on the pallet jack nearby. She screamed, an incoherent mix of a steam whistle and a drunk frat boy whistling at a concert. She lay there on the floor, clutching her arm. Running up came two guys, managers I assumed, demanding to know what happened. B stood there glowering at his assailant on the floor, who continued to make sounds that did not resemble speech. I stepped up and volunteered my observation. This lady demanded that he follow her around the store, poked him in the chest when he refused, and when he turned away from her, she grabbed his shoulder from behind, and the next thing I knew, she was on the floor. You could see some small fingernail-shaped tears on his underlayer. I found out later that there were some minor skin cuts and a drop or two of blood from where she scratched him. One of the people must have a radio because I heard him tell somebody, call an ambulance and the police, as the lady was still unable to talk, doing nothing but whimpering and continuing to clutch her arm. The other guy said don't move and ran off somewhere. A few minutes later, some cops show up. One takes me down the aisle and asks what happened. I saw B going several feet in the other direction with another cop, while a third was crouching down around the lady. A few minutes after that, the EMTs show up with a stretcher and do some EMT things, ultimately putting her on the stretcher. I wasn't paying too much attention as I was still talking with the cop, who among other things was writing down my name and address from my license. B was still with another cop, deep in conversation. I was vaguely aware of the stretcher being pushed down the aisle and heard the cop who had been with the lady say something about cameras to one of the guys who ran up originally. A few minutes later, the cop who was grilling me said I was free to leave. B was still talking with the other cop. I started to walk towards him when my cop told me, "No, you should go that way," and pointed down the aisle away from the other two. I did not argue. Near the exit at this particular Wally World was an establishment that sold underground mass transit Fox sandwiches. I was hungry, so I did the obvious. While eating, I saw one other cop walk through the doors and head off in the general direction of the beer aisle. But other than that, just a steady stream of oblivious customers streaming in and out. 12 inches of black forest ham with double meat, mayo, cheese, pickled tomato, salt and pepper later, along with 3 Cokes and a double chocolate cookie. I got a call from B asking where I was. Told him I was in the underground mass transit franchise at the doors, and he said he'd be right up. I saw him going through the checkout line with the beer and pork rinds. Priorities, right? And then he came over to me. I was ready to go, but he wanted his own underground mass transit meal, so I got a refill on my Coke and waited. He told me that the cops kept asking him questions, took down his contact information, then one came back and 2 others went with a manager type guy for several minutes. Then they came back and talked among themselves for a while, called somebody else, then told him he was free to go and that somebody would be in touch within a few days and make sure he answered and returned their calls. He's still annoyed over the fuss, a little anxious about not knowing what is happening or going to happen, but can't do anything about it besides wait. Meanwhile, half the beer is gone along with all of the pork rinds, and he wants me to go to Wally World by myself next time. I'm going to make sure I wear my reddest shirt when I do. Next story. Buy a Mercedes instead? Okay. I'm from Belgium, Europe. This happened to my father about 25 years ago, but I was there to enjoy it. Looking for a new car, we visited a few local dealerships. After having seen some cars that were within specifications, he fell in love with the brand new Citroën C5. After a test drive, my dad told the salesperson, dealership owner in this case, he loved the car but had some concerns with visibility regarding parking because the nose dropped a lot towards the front. It was the end of the 90s, so parking assistance was not yet a common thing and more of a luxury. The owner replied, clearly offended, "If you can't park, you should buy a Mercedes. They have a sight like a gun on the front." A man of principles and pride, my father told the man he was taught by his dad to always accept good advice, and we walked out without giving the surprised man another look or a chance to respond. Since the car he was driving at the time was still running smoothly, he took his time continuing his search. By pure luck, 2 weeks or so later, he runs into an old friend who tells him he had bought a Mercedes C-Class some months prior but did not like it as much, the car being a bit too big for him. After some back and forth, they agreed on a price my dad couldn't refuse, especially since this had always been one of his dream cars. About 1 week later, the transfer of ownership was complete, and the car had new tags and insurance. The very next morning, we drove to the Citroën dealership, asking the rep on duty to speak to the manager personally. We waited patiently until the man came out of his office, and he seemed to remember us, as he gave us his biggest and somewhat arrogant smile. Just to be sure though, my dad reminded him he had been there not too long before to buy the C5, but that the kind and honest man had told him to buy a Mercedes instead. Still full of himself, he informed us that he remembered and started moving towards the nearest sales office, inviting my dad to discuss the price. My dad told him this was not necessary since he had wisely accepted the man's advice and pointed outside to the sparkling Mercedes parked conveniently right in front of the big windows. For the second and last time, this man was left speechless as we casually walked outside and drove off. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.